Welcome back to Reddit Echoes, where we don't just listen to stories. We relive every awkward moment, every brutal act of compliance, every sarcastic revenge, and those seemingly small decisions that end up bringing down entire systems. Today, you're about to hear real stories from ordinary people in not-so-ordinary environments, from drama-filled office spaces to bosses who think they're gods. Only to learn the hard way that rules exist for a reason, especially when those rules turn around and bite them. Have you ever been forced to do something stupid, and instead of resisting, you just nodded, followed every word to the letter, and watched the whole thing legally go up in flames? If so, welcome. You're part of the world of malicious compliance, where playing nice is the sharpest weapon of all. Story 1. I followed the rules and brought down an entire McDonald's. Have you ever worked somewhere where the people making the rules absolutely couldn't handle it when you followed the rules? Welcome to my story, or as I like to call it, the day McDonald's lit itself on fire all. Because I took a break, I was just a worker who could read the policy handbook. A few years ago, I worked at a McDonald's near a cluster of high schools, which meant 90% of our crew were high schoolers, more hormones than experience, and a terrible habit of hanging out in the kitchen during their breaks. Instead of going to the break room, they'd eat in the kitchen, gossip with friends still on the clock, and basically treat the fryer station like a cafeteria. This, of course, tanked productivity and caused hygiene nightmares. Eventually, our manager, let's call her Karen, laid down the law. If you're on break, you stay in the break room. No stepping out, no helping, no setting foot in the kitchen until your timer's up. Sounds strict. Oh, it was. In fact, it was too strict. Summer ends, and the nightmare begins. See, once summer ended and all the teenage workers went back to school, we became severely understaffed. Break time became a death sentence for the shift. So the actual in-store managers, who to be fair weren't complete idiots, quietly allowed off-duty employees to help out during peak hours. It was all very unofficial. If you want to help, great. If not, no pressure. Everyone won. Until one day, the district manager walked in. And if you've ever worked fast food, you know district managers exist purely to ruin everything. Break means break the new holy law. This man, let's call him Corporate Carl, declared that any employee working during their unpaid break would be penalized. Didn't matter if it was voluntary, didn't matter if it helped customer service. Nope. Break meant break. He even issued an official memo: any employee found working during their scheduled break, even for a second, will be written up. Repeat offense. Termination. You think this kind of absurd policy only exists in sitcoms? I lived it. D-Day 4/20, the craziest day in fast food. Now, stupid rules are one thing, but surely no one would be dumb enough to enforce them during chaos, right? Let me tell you about the morning of 4/20. If you're unfamiliar, it's the day when every customer that walks through your door is blazed out of their mind and orders like they're feeding a small army. That morning, I sat down for my precisely 30-minute break. Right then, a group of dudes walks in and drops an order: 47 double quarter pounders, all fresh. Not even a minute later, a car pulls into the drive-thru, 75 orders of 20-piece McNuggets. I could hear the screams from the kitchen like someone had fallen into the fryer. But me, I was sipping Coke and eating fries, obeying the law to the letter. The boss orders me back, and I say no. 10 minutes in the district, manager bursts into the break room, face bright red. "You get in the kitchen now! We're drowning out there!" I looked up from my fries, calm as can be. "Sorry, sir. If I step in, you'll have to write me up. Or maybe fire me. Your rules, remember." Then I looked back down and resumed scrolling on my phone. A kind co-worker helps and gets punished. Another girl on break with me, sweet, too empathetic, couldn't stand the chaos and jumped in to help. Guess what? She got written up after the shift. Me, I sat there, ate my fries, finished my break. No write-up, no trouble. I gave her a sympathetic look after the shift, with just the tiniest smirk. The fallout $5,000 down the drain. Because nobody wanted to violate the rule, the kitchen backed up hard. Dozens of customers walked out or demanded refunds. Those 2 mega orders, nearly $150 each, fully refunded. Smaller orders. They handed out gift cards like candy total cost over $1,500. Unclaimed food over $5,000 in wasted product tossed out. I'll never forget watching the closing shift leave that night, each person lugging 2 boxes of leftover burgers, fries, and nuggets, like a farewell party to a burning ship. The aftermath, and a delicious victory. A few weeks later, both the regional and district manager were relocated out of the area. The rule rewritten: employees may end their break early during emergencies with manager approval. And me, the one who never broke a single rule, the one who complied to the bitter end, was given a lifetime free meal and drink deal, as long as I lived in that town. Even now, years later, when I visit, some employees still recognize me. They laugh and automatically scan a discount code while saying, "This is the guy who blew up our McDonald's without even lifting a spoon." I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just followed the rules, the very rules they created, and I watched those rules backfire, like a Big Mac flung straight out of the grill and into the manager's face. It was a quiet victory, but a legendary one, and I swear every time I take a bite of those discounted burgers, they taste so much better. Have you ever followed the rules so hard it made the rule makers regret everything? Drop your story in the comments, because I promise we're not alone. Story 2. My boss asked me to prove the system works. So I crashed the entire company in 6 minutes. You know what's more dangerous than a dumb boss? A dumb boss who thinks he's a management genius. And me, I was the poor IT guy dragged into that nightmare only to follow his request to the letter. And yes, I proved effectiveness. Quite literally. I used to be a chill engineer until he showed up. I worked in the IT department of a mid-sized software company, not huge, not tiny. Big enough to have a few hundred employees, but not enough money to afford a real DevOps team. So that was my job. My role was managing internal systems, network servers, backups, emails, and most importantly, the firewall and access filters. I had high-level permissions, but I never abused them. I liked keeping things running smoothly. Until he arrived. He was a hurricane in an Armani suit. His name was Brian, freshly hired as CIO. A title that sounded impressive, but as hollow as a cheap Easter egg. He had zero technical understanding, but talked like he used to code for NASA. At the very first team meeting, he said, "We're doing everything too slowly. I want measurable results, real KPIs. If this system is so good, I want to see what it's blocking." I calmly replied, "It's blocking 3,000 malicious IPs a day, 6,000 spam emails, and preventing at least 5 DDoS attempts per week." But no, that wasn't real enough for him. I want hard data. I want to see what happens if we turn it off. I was speechless. A conversation I thought only existed on Reddit. I asked him, "You want me to turn off the firewall, to test it?" "Yes. Just for 6 minutes. If it's as bad as you say, I'll see the difference. If nothing happens, then we're wasting money on security software." I stared at him in disbelief, but still asked, "Can you send me that request in writing?" "Oh, absolutely." And just like that, an email landed in my inbox signed by Brian himself, requesting me to disable all firewall settings, IP blocking proxies, and intrusion detection systems for 6 minutes to assess system performance. I knew exactly what would happen, and I let it happen. Here's the thing, our setup was delicious to hackers. Static IP, incomplete encryption protocols. Some servers were still running Windows Server 2008. So when I flipped the switch at exactly 2:02 p.m. the next day, I didn't need to wait the full 6 minutes. At minute 3, our internal email started lagging. At minute 4, alarms started blaring from our external monitoring tools. At minute 5, 2 back-end servers stopped responding due to traffic overload. At minute 6, Brian stormed into my office, pale as a ghost. "What the hell is going on?" I turned, took a sip of coffee, and said, "I'm doing exactly what you asked. We're in minute 6. Shall I re-enable the firewall?" The fallout begins. It took 5 hours to fully recover the system. Emails were down. Clients couldn't access their dashboards. We lost 3 major transactions. One sales rep got chewed out by a customer on Zoom mid-demo because the site wouldn't load. As I was reviewing logs, Brian loomed behind me, fuming. "Are you insane? Why would you actually do what I told you?" I calmly opened the email he had sent in front of HR, our lead engineer, and the big boss, and read his exact words out loud. I thought I'd be fired, but plot twist. The next morning, I was called into a boardroom meeting with upper management. I expected the worst, but instead they thanked me. "You've shown us how vital the system is. We'll be investing more into security, and Brian will be moved to a role more suited to his skills." Translation: Brian was removed as CIO, and a few months later, he quietly resigned. When someone demands you do something stupid, sometimes the best response is to let them choke on the consequences. I didn't sabotage anything. I followed direct orders and proved just how important the firewall was. And trust me, there's no greater satisfaction than watching a smug boss get slapped in the face with his own management lesson. Have you ever followed the rules so hard it backfired on the person who made them? Share your story, because I promise you, you're not alone. Story 3. Our union delayed a massive layoff plan for 3 whole years. You know what's sweeter than revenge? When the powerful are forced to play by the rules and lose at the very game they created. I used to work in the logistics department of a major hospital, a place that was supposed to be about healing, but behind the scenes, the executive board treated people like tumors to be cut out, all in the name of cost cutting. That was when we, the ants, decided to play a legal game they never saw coming. Restructuring, or just burying us alive. It all started when the hospital announced a comprehensive restructuring plan. Sounds promising, right? Until you read the fine print. The plan included reducing logistics staff by 20%, merging 3 departments into 1, forcing employees to work overtime with no additional pay. In other words, layoffs, exploitation, and hiding it behind buzzwords like optimization. But there was one thing they didn't account for: the union. We were a small union, but we knew the rules. We had a tight-knit union. And in our country's healthcare sector, the law is clear. Any major personnel change must undergo a consultation process with the labor union. That means management had to notify us in advance, allow us to ask questions, respond to those questions, and wait for the process to complete before implementing anything. That's when the most vicious idea of my life hit me. No strikes, no protests, just questions. Question 1. You say you'll reduce staff by 20%. Based on what criteria? What KPIs? Question 2. Who evaluated employee performance? Are there any conflicts of interest? Question 9. If you merge 3 departments, who is held responsible for cross-departmental mistakes? Question 16. Does unpaid overtime violate occupational health regulations? And question 31. What's your plan if employees file a collective lawsuit? We submitted a 38-page response with 78 questions. The game was on, and we had patience like stone. By law, management had to respond in detail to each question before taking further steps. And every time they sent a reply, we would spot loopholes, submit 10 new follow-up questions, demand clarification on vague terms. When their answers were half-baked, we exercised our right to escalate the issue to the Labor Department. When they sent revised drafts, we countered with legal clauses they failed to cite properly. 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. Every time it seemed like the plan might go through, we would find logical fallacies, reveal that one KPI evaluator was related to the CFO, quote, scientific studies showing that 12-hour shifts increase workplace accidents by 40%. People said we were being dramatic, but over time, others began to support us. The office ants became office heroes. Colleagues from other departments saw that we didn't back down. They began supplying us with internal emails, files, and evidence, all harmful to management's plan. The execs started panicking. After 18 months of complete deadlock, they hired a third-party neutral HR expert to mediate. Us. We showed up with 6 crates of documents, meeting recordings, and emails from employees who had resigned due to emotional distress. The expert reviewed everything, gave a cold smile, and said a line, "I'll never forget. I think the union is simply following the law. And it's time you all learn how to negotiate, not dictate." The knockout punch. After 2.5 years, we submitted a simple but deadly question. You say staffing needs to be reduced. Then why did management salaries and bonuses increase by 20% last year? 1 week later, the head of HR resigned. The following month, the restructuring project was postponed indefinitely due to current considerations. The end, we didn't start a revolution. We just followed the law line by line, and that saved dozens of people from losing their jobs. Unions aren't troublemakers. We're just people who know the law and know how to make the powerful panic when the law no longer works in their favor. If you've ever complied so hard that the system collapsed under its own rules, share your story. I'm listening. And those were today's stories where compliance wasn't submission, but a perfectly legal punch to the face of a broken system. If you felt that sweet satisfaction when a cocky boss got blindsided by his own decision, or if you've ever quietly followed orders just to teach someone a brutal lesson, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to Reddit Echoes, and share your story in the comments below. Here we don't just tell stories. We relive those uncomfortable truths, the silent revenge, and the cleverness of ordinary people standing up to power. This is Reddit Echoes, where every echo is a story, and every story is a delicious act of payback. See you in the next video.